The dusty wind swept across the Nevada territory like the hand of a vengeful ghost, carrying with it whispers of promises broken and lives cast aside. Amelia and Abigail Shaw huddled together on the auction platform in the mining town of Silver Creek, their identical faces streaked with tears as the auctioneer's voice rang out against the cruel April afternoon in 1873. Two girls, 20 years old, orphaned but healthy and strong. Sold as a pair can't separate 'em. The auctioneer, a portly man with yellow teeth and a stained waistcoat, wiped sweat from his brow as he gestured wildly at the twins. Who'll start the bidding? Need someone to take both. Family wishes kept together. Amelia squeezed her sister's hand, feeling Abigail trembling beside her. Their parents' deaths from typhoid 3 months prior had left them penniless, with nothing but debts and each other. The family lawyer had arranged this indentured service auction to settle their father's outstanding loans, a barely legal practice that lingered in these remote territories. "Nobody wants 2 mouths to feed," someone shouted from the gathered crowd. "Can't we just take the pretty one?" Another voice called, sending a ripple of laughter through the onlookers. The twins were identical in every physical way, both with long auburn hair that fell in waves down their backs, deep green eyes, and a sprinkling of freckles across their noses. But their personalities couldn't have been more different. Amelia was fierce and outspoken, while Abigail was gentle and thoughtful. $100 for both, a voice called from the back, silencing the crowd. The sea of people parted as a tall figure strode forward. Broad-shouldered and sun-bronzed, he moved with the easy confidence of a man who knew his own strength. His dark hair was slightly too long, brushing the collar of his worn leather vest. A Colt revolver hung at his hip, and spurs jingled softly with each step. "Name's Henry Ryder," he said, his voice calm and clear in the sudden quiet. "I'll take both ladies." The auctioneer's eyebrows shot up. "You understand they come as a set, Mr. Ryder, can't separate 'em, family stipulation." A small smile touched Henry's lips as he reached into his pocket and withdrew a leather pouch. "Then I reckon I get twice the blessing," he said, tossing the pouch onto the auctioneer's table. The coins inside clinked heavily. "Sold." The auctioneer's gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through Amelia's very bones. "We're not cattle," Amelia hissed, stepping forward despite Abigail's restraining hand. "You can't just buy us." Henry Ryder's gaze met hers, steady and unperturbed. "No, madam, you're not cattle. But you are in debt, and I just paid it. Now, would you rather come with me to my ranch or stay here and see what other offers might come your way?" He gestured vaguely toward the crowd, where several rough-looking miners were eyeing them with undisguised interest. Abigail tugged gently at her sister's arm. "Amelia," she whispered, "please." Amelia swallowed her pride and nodded curtly. "Very well, Mr. Ryder." The journey from Silver Creek to Henry Ryder's ranch took nearly 2 days by wagon. The twins sat side by side on the hard wooden bench, their meager possessions a single trunk containing clothes, a few books, and their mother's jewelry stored in the back. Henry drove in silence for the most part, occasionally pointing out landmarks or warning them about a rough patch of road ahead. By nightfall of the first day, they had made camp near a small creek. Henry efficiently built a fire and prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and coffee. As they ate, Amelia studied their new owner surreptitiously. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps only 28 or 30. His hands were calloused but clean, and he moved with a quiet efficiency that spoke of a man accustomed to fending for himself. "Why did you buy us?" Abigail asked suddenly, her soft voice startling in the quiet evening. Henry looked up from the fire. "My ranch is growing. Need help with the house, cooking, cleaning, garden. Been living like a bachelor too long." He paused. "And folks shouldn't be separated from their kin, not if it can be helped." "And what exactly will be expected of us?" Amelia asked sharply, her implication clear. Henry's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "You'll have your own room. Lock on the door. I don't force myself on women, Miss Shaw. Never have, never will. You work for me for 3 years to pay off your debt, then you're free to go or stay as you please with fair wages." Amelia felt a flush rise to her cheeks, but she held his gaze. "And if we choose to leave before then, contract says 3 years, law would be on my side." He took a sip of coffee. But I don't hold with keeping folks against their will. You want to leave, we'll figure something out. Abigail sent Amelia a warning glance. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Ryder. We're grateful. The next day brought them to a long, sloping valley nestled between two ridges of mountains. A creek wound through the center, bordered by tall cottonwoods and willows. At the far end, a sprawling single-story ranch house stood, with several outbuildings, corrals, and a large barn nearby. Ryder Ranch, Henry announced, guiding the wagon up the long drive. Been in my family for 15 years. My pa built most of it, added on over time. It's beautiful, Abigail murmured, and even Amelia had to admit the setting was picturesque. As they drew closer, a figure emerged from one of the corrals, a Mexican man in his 50s, with streaks of gray in his black hair and a wide smile that revealed a missing tooth. Miguel Vasquez, Henry explained. Ranch foreman, been with us since the beginning. His wife Elena comes by twice a week to help with washing and such. Miguel approached the wagon as it came to a stop. Boss, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow. His eyes widened slightly as he noticed the twins. And you've brought guests. These ladies are Amelia and Abigail Shaw, Henry said, jumping down from the wagon. They'll be staying with us, helping around the ranch house. Miguel's warm brown eyes crinkled as he smiled at the twins. Welcome to Ryder Ranch, senoritas. It will be good to have young faces around the place. Henry helped the twins down from the wagon, then carried their trunk into the house. Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly spacious and well-built, if somewhat sparse in furnishings. A large main room contained a stone fireplace, several chairs, and a long dining table. A hallway led to what appeared to be bedrooms. This way, Henry said, leading them down the corridor. He stopped at a door near the end. This will be your room. It's the largest besides mine. Thought you'd appreciate the space, being two of you. He pushed open the door to reveal a large bedroom with two single beds, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the creek and mountains beyond. It was plain but clean, with fresh linens on the beds. Bathrooms at the end of the hall, got indoor plumbing put in last year. There was a touch of pride in his voice. Kitchen's through there, he gestured to another doorway. Make yourselves at home, I'll be out with the horses if you need anything. With that, he left them alone. Abigail immediately sank onto one of the beds. Well, she said softly, it could be much worse. Amelia snorted, unpacking their few possessions. We're still essentially slaves, Abby. He seems decent enough, Abigail countered, and he did save us from being separated or worse. Amelia couldn't argue with that. The looks some of those miners had been giving them still made her skin crawl. The first week at Ryder Ranch passed in a flurry of adjustments. The twins quickly established a routine, with Amelia taking charge of the cooking and Abigail handling the cleaning and gardening. They learned that besides Henry and Miguel, there were 3 other ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse: Jake, a weathered cowboy in his 40s, Thomas, a cheerful young man barely out of his teens, and Ali, a quiet, muscular black man who had been with the ranch for 5 years. Henry himself was often gone from sunup to sundown, working with the cattle, checking fences, or riding into town for supplies. When he was present for meals, he was polite but reserved, answering questions directly but rarely initiating conversation. One evening, as Amelia was preparing supper, she heard the sound of music drifting from the main room. Curious, she wiped her hands and peered around the doorway. Henry sat in a chair near the fire, a guitar in his hands, playing a melancholy tune. His eyes were closed, his face relaxed in a way she'd never seen before. She must have made some small sound, for his eyes suddenly opened and the music stopped abruptly. Sorry, she said, embarrassed at being caught. I didn't mean to interrupt. Henry set the guitar aside. No harm done. That was beautiful, she said, surprising herself. I didn't know you played. A fleeting smile crossed his face. My mother taught me. She loved music. Past tense? Amelia asked before she could stop herself. Henry's expression closed off again. She died when I was 16, fever. I'm sorry, Amelia said softly. Our parents died of typhoid 3 months ago, that's why. She gestured vaguely, indicating their current situation. Henry nodded. Miguel mentioned your father was a banker in Virginia City. Yes, after the war we moved west for a fresh start. Father thought there would be opportunities here. She laughed without humor. He wasn't very good at banking, as it turned out. Times have been hard for a lot of folks, Henry said. After a moment he added, "You're doing well with the cooking, better than me anyway." The compliment, unexpected as it was, brought heat to Amelia's cheeks. "Thank you, Abby's the real talent though. Wait until she gets that garden going. She can make anything grow." As if summoned by her name, Abigail appeared at the back door, her arms full of wild flowers. "Look what I found by the creek," she exclaimed, her face alight with pleasure. "They'll look lovely on the table, don't you think?" Henry rose to his feet. "I'll find you something to put those in," he said, disappearing into the kitchen. Abigail raised an eyebrow at Amelia. "Was that a smile I saw on Mr. Ryder's face?" "Hush," Amelia whispered, but she found herself smiling too. As spring turned to summer, the ranch settled into a pleasant rhythm. The twins learned the ways of ranch life, from preserving food to treating minor injuries. Elena Vasquez, Miguel's wife, became a friend and mentor, teaching them local recipes and sharing gossip from town. Abigail thrived in the open air and sunshine. Her garden flourished beyond all expectations, providing fresh vegetables for the table. She spent hours exploring the property, learning the names of wildflowers and birds, often accompanied by the ranch dog, an aging collie named Buck. Amelia, while outwardly adapting, still struggled with their position. She kept a careful tally of the work they did, calculating its worth against their debt. At night, she sometimes lay awake, planning for the day they would be free to make their own choices again, yet she couldn't deny that Henry Ryder was a fair employer. He never raised his voice, never made inappropriate demands, and seemed genuinely appreciative of their efforts. She found herself watching him when he didn't notice the way the sun glinted off his dark hair, how his strong hands gentled when handling a newborn calf, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. One sweltering July afternoon, Amelia was hanging laundry when she heard shouts from the direction of the corral. Dropping the damp sheet back into the basket, she hurried toward the commotion. Several men, including Henry and Miguel, were gathered around something on the ground. As she drew closer, she saw it was Thomas, the youngest ranch hand, his face contorted in pain, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. "What happened?" she asked, pushing through to kneel beside the injured man. "New Mustang threw him," Jake explained grimly. "Caught his foot in the stirrup, dragged him half across the corral before we could catch up." "We need to set that leg," Amelia said, her childhood memories of helping the local doctor during the war surfacing. "Help me get him to the house." Henry gave her a sharp look, then nodded to the men. Together, they carefully lifted Thomas and carried him to the main house, laying him on the long dining table that Amelia had hastily cleared. "Abby," Amelia called, "bring hot water and all the clean cloth you can find." As Abigail hurried to comply, Amelia turned to Henry. "I need whiskey for him and for the wound and something he can bite down on." "You know what you're doing?" Henry asked, his voice low. Amelia met his gaze steadily. "My father was friends with our town doctor. During the war, they needed all the help they could get. I've assisted with worse than this." Henry nodded once, then moved to fetch the requested items. For the next hour, Amelia worked to clean and set Thomas's broken leg, with Abigail assisting and the men hovering anxiously. When it was done, Thomas had passed out from a combination of pain and whiskey, but his leg was properly splinted and bandaged. "He'll need a real doctor," Amelia said, washing blood from her hands in a basin of water. "But this should hold until you can get him to town." "Town's a day's ride," Henry said. "With that leg, it would be torture for him." "Then the doctor needs to come here," Amelia insisted. "I'll go," Miguel volunteered. "First light tomorrow, too dangerous to ride those mountain trails in the dark." Later that night, after Thomas had been moved to a makeshift bed in the main room and given laudanum for the pain, Amelia stepped outside to escape the stuffy heat of the house. The night air was cool on her skin, the sky a vast canvas of stars above the dark silhouettes of mountains. She hadn't heard Henry approach until his voice came from just behind her. "You did well today." Amelia turned to find him standing closer than she'd expected, his features softened by moonlight. "Thank you, I'm glad I could help. Where did you learn medical skills like that?" "After my mother died, I spent a lot of time at Dr. Bennett's clinic. Father thought it inappropriate, but the doctor said I had a natural aptitude." She shrugged. "During the war, there weren't enough hands. I learned what I needed to." Henry was quiet for a moment, looking out at the night. "You're full of surprises, Amelia Shaw." The way he said her name sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "I could say the same about you, Mr. Ryder." "Henry," he said. "After today, I think you've earned the right to use my given name." Amelia smiled slightly. "Henry," she repeated, testing the feel of it on her tongue. Their eyes met in the darkness, and something unspoken passed between them, something that made Amelia's heart beat faster. Then Henry cleared his throat and stepped back. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be a long day." The doctor arrived the following evening, a gruff man named Dr. Harrison, who examined Thomas's leg and declared that Amelia had done an excellent job. "Couldn't have said it better myself," he announced, accepting a cup of coffee from Abigail. "Where'd you learn such skills, young lady?" "Virginia during the war," Amelia replied. Dr. Harrison studied her with newfound respect. "Well, you've got a gift. Ever consider pursuing medicine?" Amelia laughed softly. "Women aren't exactly welcome in medical schools, doctor." "Times are changing," he said. "Slow, but changing. There's a female doctor in Boston now and another in New York, pioneers like us out here." He took a sip of his coffee. "Something to think about anyway." As summer progressed, Thomas's leg healed slowly but steadily. Unable to work, he spent his days sitting on the porch, whittling or reading dime novels. Abigail often kept him company, bringing him cool drinks or reading to him when his eyes tired. Amelia noticed the way the young ranch hand's face brightened whenever her sister appeared, and how Abigail seemed to find more and more reasons to check on his progress. One evening in early August, a thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains, bringing with it a deluge that turned the yard to mud and sent the creek rising dangerously. Henry and the men worked frantically to move the livestock to higher ground, while Amelia and Abigail secured the house against the driving rain. By midnight, the worst had passed, but the creek had overflowed its banks, flooding the lower pastures. Amelia stood at the window, watching lightning illuminate the waterlogged landscape. Henry had not yet returned from checking on a pregnant mare in the far corral, and despite her efforts to remain unconcerned, worry gnawed at her. The back door suddenly burst open, admitting Henry and a gust of rain. He was soaked to the skin, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, mud up to his knees. "Henry," Amelia hurried to him, relief making her voice sharper than intended. "Where have you been? Everyone else returned hours ago." "Mare was foaling," he said, stripping off his dripping coat. "Couldn't leave her. Colt's healthy, though, black as midnight with a star on his forehead." Amelia grabbed a blanket from the back of a chair and thrust it at him. "You'll catch your death. Here, sit by the fire." Henry looked surprised at her concern, but did as she suggested, sinking into a chair near the hearth. Amelia busied herself making hot coffee, hyper-aware of him watching her movements. "You were worried," he said finally, a question in his voice. Amelia handed him a steaming cup. "Of course I was worried. A man would have to be a fool to be out in weather like this." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Then I must be a fool." "I didn't say that," she protested, "not in so many words." His smile widened, transforming his face in a way that made Amelia's heart skip a beat. She sat in the chair opposite him, her own coffee clutched between her hands. "How long have you had this ranch?" "Inherited it when Pa died 5 years ago. He built it from nothing. Came west in '48 during the gold rush, but he was smart enough to see that the real money was in supplying the miners, not joining them." Henry took a sip of his coffee. "Started with a few cattle, then bought more land when others gave up and headed back east. By the time I was born, he had one of the most successful spreads in the territory." "You must be proud of what he accomplished," Amelia said. Henry's expression grew distant. "He was a hard man, fair but hard, expected a lot from everyone, especially his son." He glanced at her. "What about your father? What kind of man was he?" Amelia considered the question. "Kind, dreamy, not very practical. He loved beautiful things, art, music, literature. He could quote Shakespeare for hours." She smiled sadly. "Not the best qualities for a banker, perhaps, but he made our childhood magical." "And your sister, you two are so different despite being identical. Abby's the best of us. She sees beauty in everything, finds joy in small things, never holds a grudge." Amelia shook her head. "I'm the difficult one, too outspoken, too stubborn." I wouldn't call it difficult, Henry said quietly. Strong-willed maybe, independent, not bad qualities to have, especially out here. Their eyes met across the small space between them, and something in his gaze made Amelia's breath catch. For a moment it seemed as though he might say more, might reach for her hand. Then the clock on the mantel chimed, breaking the spell. It's late, Henry said, rising to his feet. You should get some rest. Amelia stood as well, suddenly awkward. Yes, of course, good night, Henry. Good night, Amelia. As she lay in bed later, listening to Abigail's soft breathing from the next bed and the rain pattering against the window, Amelia admitted to herself what she had been trying to deny for weeks. She was falling in love with Henry Ryder. August gave way to September, bringing cooler nights and golden days. The harvest kept everyone busy gathering the last of the garden's bounty, preserving food for winter, preparing the ranch for the coming cold. Amelia found herself working alongside Henry more often, their initial awkwardness giving way to a comfortable companionship. One crisp morning, Henry approached her as she was collecting eggs from the henhouse. I need to ride into Las Vegas for supplies, he said. Thought you might want to come along. Town's growing fast, might be interesting for you to see. Amelia hesitated only briefly. I'd like that. Let me tell Abby. Already did, Henry said with a smile. She's staying behind to help Thomas with his exercises. Doc says he might be ready to try walking with a cane soon. 2 hours later, they were on the trail to Las Vegas, Amelia riding a gentle mare named Daisy while Henry rode his stallion, Thunder. The journey gave them time to talk, really talk, without the constant interruptions of ranch life. Henry told her about his dreams for the ranch, about the new breeding stock he hoped to acquire, about his plans to build a bigger house someday. Amelia shared stories of her childhood in Virginia, of the devastation of the war, of her brief engagement to a young lieutenant who had died at Gettysburg. I never thought I'd love again after James died, she admitted as they stopped to rest the horses by a small stream. It seemed disloyal somehow. Henry was quiet for a moment, and now Amelia looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Now I think perhaps the heart is more resilient than I gave it credit for. Las Vegas was indeed growing rapidly, though it was still small compared to Virginia City or even Silver Creek. The railroad had recently connected it to the larger world, bringing new settlers and businesses. Amelia wandered through the general store while Henry arranged for supplies to be delivered to the ranch. She fingered soft bolts of fabric, dreaming of new curtains for the house, perhaps a dress that wasn't mended in a dozen places. See something you like? Henry asked, appearing at her elbow. Amelia dropped her hand from a bolt of blue calico. Just looking. Get it, Henry said, and anything else you or Abigail need, new dresses, shoes, whatever women require. We can't afford, consider it part of your wages, Henry interrupted. You've both worked hard, it's only fair. Before Amelia could protest further, the storekeeper's wife approached. Mrs. Davenport, Henry greeted her. This is Miss Amelia Shaw. She and her sister have been helping out at my ranch these past months. Lovely to meet you, dear, Mrs. Davenport said, eyeing Amelia with undisguised curiosity. We don't see Mr. Ryder in town with a lady friend very often. Amelia felt her cheeks grow warm. It's not we're not, Miss Shaw works for me, Henry said smoothly, but she has excellent taste. Perhaps you could help her select some fabrics and other necessities, as Mrs. Davenport led Amelia around the store, pointing out new arrivals and gossiping about town happenings. Amelia caught snippets of Henry's conversation with Mr. Davenport. Something about cattle prices, a new railroad spur being planned, and most interestingly a question about a jeweler who had recently set up shop in town. By the time they left Las Vegas, the sun was low in the sky, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. They rode in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Amelia's new purchases were carefully packed in Henry's saddlebags, along with a mysterious small package he had obtained while she was busy with Mrs. Davenport. Thank you for today, Amelia said as they approached the ranch. It was nice to see something beyond the valley. Henry glanced at her, his expression soft in the fading light. You're not a prisoner here, Amelia. If you want to go to town or anywhere else, you only need to ask. I know that now, she said quietly. As they neared the house, Abigail came running out to meet them, her face alight with excitement. You'll never believe it, she exclaimed. Thomas stood up on his own today. He walked all the way across the porch without his cane. Henry swung down from his horse and helped Amelia dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than strictly necessary. That's wonderful news. The boy's tougher than he looks. Something in Abigail's eyes, a certain glow that hadn't been there before, caught Amelia's attention. Later, as they prepared for bed, she broached the subject. You've grown quite fond of Thomas, haven't you? Abigail busied herself with brushing her hair, avoiding her sister's gaze. He's a sweet boy, very kind. Abby, Amelia said gently, you know you can tell me anything. Abigail set down the brush and turned to face her twin. He asked permission to court me, she confessed in a rush. Today, when we were alone, said he's been sweet on me since the first day we arrived, but didn't think he had anything to offer until he healed. And what did you say? Amelia asked, though she already knew the answer from her sister's radiant smile. I said yes, of course, Abigail laughed. Oh, Amelia, he's wonderful, so gentle and thoughtful, and he writes poetry, can you believe it? Not very good poetry, mind you, but he tries. Amelia crossed the room to hug her sister tightly. I'm happy for you truly, Thomas is a good man. After a moment she added, but what about our plans? We always said we'd stay together, find our own place when our contract is up. Abigail's smile faltered. I know, but that was before. Before everything changed. Don't you feel it too? This place is starting to feel like home. Amelia couldn't deny it. The ranch, with its wide open spaces and rugged beauty, had woven itself into her heart in a way she hadn't expected. Or perhaps it wasn't just the ranch, but the man who owned it. Henry asked about you today, Abigail said, watching her sister's face carefully. Wanted to know if you seemed happy here, if there was anything he could do to make things better for you. He did, Abigail nodded. He cares for you, Amelia. Anyone with eyes can see it. It's complicated, Amelia sighed. He technically owns our contract. How can there be anything real between us with that imbalance? Perhaps you should ask him that question, Abigail suggested. You might be surprised by his answer. The following weeks brought dramatic changes to the ranch. Thomas officially moved from the bunkhouse to a small cabin near the main house, ostensibly to be closer during his recovery, but really to be nearer to Abigail. His courtship was conducted with old-fashioned formality, much to Abigail's delight and the good-natured teasing of the other ranch hands. October arrived with its brilliant foliage and crisp mornings. Preparations for winter consumed most daylight hours, but in the evenings, the ranch house became a warm haven of music, conversation, and laughter. Henry had begun playing his guitar more regularly, sometimes accompanied by Ileana harmonica or Miguel singing old Spanish ballads. One such evening, as Amelia sat mending by the fire while Henry played a gentle melody, he suddenly stopped mid-song. Walk with me, he said, setting aside the guitar and rising to his feet. Surprised, Amelia set down her sewing. Now it's nearly dark. Best time to see the stars, he replied with a smile that made her heart flutter. Outside, the air was cool and sharp with the scent of pine and wood smoke. Henry led her past the barn to a small rise overlooking the valley. The mountains were dark silhouettes against a sky ablaze with stars, the ranch buildings miniature in the distance. I come here to think, Henry said, spreading his coat on the ground for them to sit. To remember why I do what I do. Amelia settled beside him, drawing her shawl closer against the evening chill. And why do you do it? Run the ranch, I mean. Henry was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. At first because it was expected, family legacy and all that. But now, he turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting starlight. Now I do it because I love this land, because I want to build something that lasts, something good and true. His hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers warm and strong as they intertwined with her own. Amelia, there's something I need to say. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. Yes. The day I saw you and Abigail on that auction platform, something happened to me. I didn't understand it then. Told myself I was just doing what was right, saving two women from a bad situation. He took a deep breath, but it was more than that, much more. Henry, please let me finish. He squeezed her hand gently. I know our beginning was unconventional. The contract, the debt, it complicates things. But I want you to know that in my mind, that debt was settled the moment you saved Thomas's leg. Everything since then has been your choice to stay. My choice, Amelia whispered. Your choice, he confirmed. I would have torn up that contract months ago if I thought it would make you see me as a man, not a master, if I thought it would give me a chance to court you properly, the way you deserve. Amelia felt tears prick at her eyes. You want to court me? In the silvery moonlight, his smile was breathtaking. Amelia Shaw, I want much more than that. I want to marry you if you'll have me. Time seemed to stand still as his words hung in the air between them. Then, with a soft cry, Amelia threw her arms around his neck. Yes, she whispered against his ear. Yes, I'll have you. Henry pulled back just enough to frame her face with his hands. You're sure you understand what I'm offering, not just my name, but my heart, my life, everything I have or will ever have. In answer, Amelia leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question and an answer all at once, then deepening as Henry pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard, foreheads touching, hands still entwined. I need to do this properly, Henry said, reaching into his pocket. I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. He withdrew a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a gold ring set with a modest but brilliant diamond. It was my mother's, he explained. Pa gave it to me before he died, said I should give it to the woman who captured my heart the way Ma captured his. Tears spilled freely down Amelia's cheeks as Henry slid the ring onto her finger. It's beautiful, she said. Perfect. Later, as they walked back to the house hand in hand, Amelia couldn't stop looking at the ring that now adorned her finger. Abigail will be beside herself with joy, she said. She's been hinting for weeks that you had feelings for me. Henry laughed. Was I that obvious? To everyone but me, apparently. She hesitated, then added, There's still the matter of the contract. Henry stopped walking, turning to face her in the moonlight. Consider it void. First thing tomorrow, I'll tear it up in front of witnesses. You and Abigail are free women. And if I choose to stay, not as an employee, but as your wife, then, Amelia Shaw, soon-to-be Ryder, you would make me the happiest man in the Nevada territory. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch. Abigail's delight was everything Amelia had expected, especially when Henry announced that both contracts were null and void, effective immediately. Thomas seized the opportunity to formally ask for Abigail's hand, which she granted with joyful tears and a kiss that made the ranch hands whoop and whistle. A double wedding, Elena Vasquez declared, clapping her hands. It will be the event of the year. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Word was sent to Las Vegas and neighboring ranches. Elena and several women from town took charge of sewing wedding dresses for the twins. Miguel and the ranch hands built a dance floor near the house, and Henry ordered special supplies from as far away as San Francisco. The wedding was set for November 15th, giving them just over a month to prepare. As the day approached, Amelia found moments of quiet panic amid the excitement. Was she really ready for this step? Was it too soon? Had their unusual beginning somehow rushed them into something neither was ready for, but whenever doubts crept in, Henry seemed to sense it. He would find her, take her hands in his, and speak softly of their future together, of the children they might have, of growing old side by side, of facing whatever came their way as partners. And in those moments, Amelia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, the mountains dusted with the first snow of the season. The ranch was transformed with paper lanterns strung between trees, tables laden with food, and flowers arranged in every available container. Guests began arriving mid-morning, neighboring ranchers, townspeople from Las Vegas, even Dr. Harrison, who had become something of a friend to the family. In the main bedroom, Amelia and Abigail helped each other dress. Their gowns were simple but elegant, Amelia's in ivory with blue ribbons, Abigail's the same but with pink accents, the only concession to their need to be distinguished on this important day. I never thought we'd be married on the same day, Abigail said, adjusting her sister's veil. But then I never thought we'd be auctioned off and bought by a handsome rancher either. Amelia laughed, the last of her nervousness fading. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? A knock at the door revealed Elena, her eyes already damp with sentimental tears. It is time, Niñas. Your men are waiting. The ceremony took place beneath an arch of autumn branches and late blooming wildflowers. Henry and Thomas stood side by side, both looking uncharacteristically nervous in their best suits. As the twins walked toward them, a collective murmur went through the assembled guests. The sight of two identical brides, radiant with happiness, was something few would ever forget. The local judge, a friend of Henry's father, performed the ceremony with dignified solemnity. When it came time for the vows, Henry's voice rang out clear and steady. "Amelia Shaw, I take you as my wife to love and cherish all the days of my life. I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes, to respect your strength and independence, to be worthy of your trust. You are the blessing I never expected, the heart I didn't know I needed until I found you." Amelia's voice trembled slightly as she responded, but her words were no less sincere. "Henry Ryder, I take you as my husband to love and honor all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner in all things, to face life's challenges by your side, to build a home and family with you. You gave me freedom when you could have demanded servitude, offered love when you could have claimed ownership. For that, and for the man you are, I will love you always." Similar vows were exchanged between Abigail and Thomas, though Thomas had to pause several times, overcome with emotion. When the judge finally pronounced them married, the cheers could likely be heard all the way to Las Vegas. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night. There was feasting and dancing, storytelling and singing. Abigail and Thomas barely left each other's side, while Amelia found herself passed from partner to partner as various guests claimed dances with the bride. It was nearly midnight when she finally found herself back in Henry's arms, swaying slowly to a melody played by Ali on his harmonica. "Happy Mrs. Ryder," Henry murmured against her hair. "Perfectly," she replied, nestling closer. "Though I must admit, I'm rather looking forward to all these lovely people going home." Henry's low laugh rumbled in his chest. "Soon, my love, very soon." True to his word, within the hour Henry was bidding farewell to the last of their guests. Thomas and Abigail had already retired to their cabin, which had been decorated by the ranch hands with ribbons and flowers in a good-natured display of teasing. As Henry closed the front door behind the last departing wagon, he turned to find Amelia standing in the center of the room, suddenly shy despite the months of growing intimacy between them. "Alone at last," he said softly, crossing to her. "Are you tired? It's been a long day." "Not tired," she answered. "Just a little nervous." Henry took her hands in his eyes gentle. "We have all the time in the world, Amelia. Nothing needs to happen tonight that you're not ready for." In response, Amelia rose on tiptoe and kissed him, trying to convey through that kiss all the love and desire she felt but couldn't quite put into words. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, she took his hand and led him toward their bedroom, the master bedroom that would now be theirs to share. Later, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Amelia traced lazy patterns on Henry's chest. "Do you remember what you said that day at the auction?" she asked. "When the auctioneer told you we came as a pair," Henry smiled in the darkness. "I said I reckon I get twice the blessing. And did you get twice the blessing?" He gathered her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "1,000 times over, my love. 1,000 times over." Spring came early to the ranch in 1874, bringing with it the renewal of the land and two momentous announcements. Abigail was expecting a child in late summer, and Henry had purchased the adjacent property, doubling the size of Ryder Ranch. Both pieces of news were celebrated with equal enthusiasm by the extended ranch family. As Abigail's pregnancy progressed, Amelia found herself experiencing an unexpected mixture of joy for her sister and a quiet longing of her own. She and Henry had been trying for a child since their wedding, so far without success. Though Henry never mentioned it, Amelia sometimes caught him watching wistfully as Thomas fussed over Abigail's growing belly or discussed names for their future son or daughter. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Amelia broached the subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Would you be very disappointed if we couldn't have children?" she asked, her voice small. Henry turned to her, surprise evident in his expression. "What brought this on? Abby's so happy, and you seem so excited about becoming an uncle. I just wonder if you regret." She couldn't finish the sentence. Henry took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. Amelia Ryder, listen to me very carefully. Yes, I want children with you. The thought of a little girl with your spirit or a boy with your eyes makes my heart ache with longing. But if that blessing never comes to us, I will still count myself the luckiest man alive to have you as my wife." Tears filled Amelia's eyes. "I want it too so much, but what if something's wrong with me? Then we'll face it together," he said simply. "And remember, we've only been married 6 months. These things take time, or so Alina keeps telling me." Amelia managed a watery smile. "She's been giving you advice too, every chance she gets." Henry's expression grew serious again. "But if it would ease your mind, we could speak to Dr. Harrison when he comes for Abigail's next checkup. He might have suggestions." Amelia nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder as they watched the last light fade from the sky. "I love you, Henry Ryder, and I love you, Amelia Ryder, no matter what the future holds." As it happened, a visit to the doctor proved unnecessary. Just 2 weeks later, Amelia woke with a bout of nausea that had nothing to do with something she'd eaten and everything to do with the tiny life now growing within her. When her suspicions were confirmed, Henry's joy was boundless. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen until she laughingly begged to be put down before she was sick again. The summer of 1874 passed in a golden haze of contentment. The ranch prospered, the expanded herds thriving on the new pastureland. Thomas proved himself not just a capable ranch hand but a natural leader, taking on more responsibility as Henry focused on broader aspects of the business. Abigail bloomed in pregnancy, her natural serenity deepening as her time drew near. The sisters spent countless hours together, sewing baby clothes, discussing names, and sharing the unique experience of creating new life. In late August, after a mercifully short labor, Abigail gave birth to a healthy baby boy whom she and Thomas named William Henry, honoring both Thomas's father and the man who had brought them all together. "He's perfect," Amelia whispered, cradling her tiny nephew while Thomas hovered protectively and Abigail looked on from the bed with exhausted pride. "Your turn next," Abigail said with a tired smile. "Just wait until February." "I don't know if I can be as brave as you were," Amelia admitted, carefully returning the baby to her sister's arms. "You're the bravest person I know," Abigail said firmly. "You'll do wonderfully." As autumn painted the valley in rich hues of red and gold, Amelia found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. Just over a year ago, she and Abigail had stood trembling on an auction platform, their futures uncertain and frightening. Now they were wives, homemakers, and in Abigail's case already and Amelia's soon mothers. "Penny for your thoughts," Henry said, finding her one October afternoon in what had become her favorite spot, the small rise where he had proposed. Amelia smiled up at him, making room on the blanket she had spread on the ground. At 4 months pregnant, she was just beginning to show, her normally slender figure softening with the evidence of their child. "I was just thinking about how much can change in a year," she said as he settled beside her. "How life can take the most unexpected turns." Henry placed a gentle hand on her rounded belly. "Any regrets? Not a single one," she replied without hesitation. "Though I do sometimes wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been at that auction, if someone else had bought our contract." "I don't like to think about that," Henry said, his expression darkening. "Some of those men—" "But that's just it," Amelia interrupted. "You were there. Of all the possible outcomes, we got the best one. More than the best, we got a miracle." Henry's face softened as he leaned in to kiss her. "2 miracles if you count this little one." He patted her belly again. 3 if you count your nephew, 4 if you count finding Thomas for Abigail. Amelia laughed. "At this rate, we'll have counted to 100 before supper." "And I'd still have more blessings to name," Henry said, gathering her close as they watched the sun begin its descent toward the mountains, painting the landscape in the same golden hues that seemed to illuminate their lives. Winter came early that year, with the first heavy snow falling just after Thanksgiving. The ranch settled into its cold-weather routine, feeding livestock, maintaining buildings, and spending long evenings by the fire. William, now 3 months old, became the center of attention, his first smile and early attempts at babbling celebrated as major achievements. Christmas was a joyous affair, with the house decorated with pine boughs and ribbons, and presents exchanged with thoughtful care. Henry gave Amelia a delicate gold locket containing a tiny lock of his hair. "So our child will always have both of us close to their heart," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. As January blew in with howling winds and bitter cold, Amelia's pregnancy advanced to its final stages. She grew increasingly uncomfortable, but bore the discomfort with good grace, laughing at Henry's increasing anxiety and Abigail's constant motherly advice. "You'd think I was the first woman ever to have a baby," she told Miguel one afternoon as the foreman helped her hang fresh curtains in the nursery Henry had built adjoining their bedroom. Miguel chuckled. "For a man with his first child, Senora, it is always as if no other baby has ever been born. Wait until the little one arrives, he will be worse, not better." "Wonderful," Amelia groaned, though secretly she found Henry's protective concern endearing. February arrived with a sudden thaw, turning the ranch into a sea of mud. It was during this brief respite from winter, on a relatively mild evening when the stars seemed unusually bright, that Amelia felt the first pains of labor. True to Miguel's prediction, Henry was nearly useless with worry. It took both Thomas and Ali to convince him to leave the bedroom where Abigail and Alina were attending Amelia. "Come on, boss," Illy said, practically dragging Henry to the main room. "Women been doing this since Eve. Let them work." The labor was long and difficult. By dawn, Amelia was exhausted, her strength flagging. "I can't do this," she gasped after a particularly painful contraction. "Yes, you can," Abigail said firmly, wiping her twin's forehead with a cool cloth. "You're the strongest person I know, remember, just a little longer." As the sun broke over the eastern mountains, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, a new cry joined the morning chorus of birdsong and livestock, the healthy, indignant wail of a newborn taking their first breath. "A boy," Alina announced triumphantly. "A beautiful boy." When Henry was finally allowed into the room, he moved as if in a dream, his eyes never leaving the tiny bundle in Amelia's arms. "He's so small," he whispered, gently touching the downy dark hair that covered the baby's head. "But strong," Amelia said, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the wave of love that swept over her as she watched her husband meet their son for the first time. Like his father, Henry's eyes when they met hers were bright with unshed tears. "What shall we name him?" "James," Amelia said without hesitation. "James Henry Ryder." "After your lieutenant?" Henry asked softly. Amelia nodded. "He was a good man who never got to live his life. I'd like our son to carry his name forward if that's all right with you." "It's perfect," Henry said, carefully taking the baby into his arms. "Welcome to the world, James Henry Ryder. You have no idea how long we've waited for you." The years that followed brought both joy and challenges to the Ryder Ranch. The cattle business had its boom and bust years, but Henry's careful management and forward thinking kept them prosperous even when others failed. The ranch expanded again with the purchase of water rights and additional grazing land. A regular stagecoach route was established through the valley, bringing mail and visitors more frequently and connecting them more firmly to the wider world. Both families grew as well. Abigail and Thomas welcomed a daughter, Charlotte, in 1876, followed by twin boys, Samuel and Daniel, in 1879. Amelia gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, in 1877, and another son, Michael, in 1880. The children grew up more like siblings than cousins, running wild across the ranch, learning to ride almost as soon as they could walk, and absorbing the values of hard work, honesty, and family loyalty that formed the foundation of their parents' lives. By 1883, Ryder Ranch had become one of the most successful operations in the territory. The original ranch house had been expanded twice to accommodate the growing families, and a proper schoolhouse had been built halfway between the ranch and Las Vegas, serving both the Ryder children and those from neighboring properties. On a warm September evening in that 10th year since the twins had arrived at the ranch, a special celebration was held. Tables were set up beneath the cottonwoods, lanterns hung from branches, and a feast prepared that rivaled the one at the double wedding a decade earlier. As the sun began to set, Henry rose to his feet, tapping his glass for attention. The assembled company family, ranch hands, neighbors, and friends gradually fell silent. 10 years ago, Henry began, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air. I rode into Silver Creek on a supply run and came home with something far more valuable than anything I could have purchased at the general store. He glanced at Amelia, who sat with baby Michael on her lap, and 7-year-old James leaning against her shoulder, then at Abigail, surrounded by her own 3 children with Thomas's arm draped protectively around her waist. Some of you know the story, some don't. But 10 years ago, I made the best decision of my life when I paid $100 for 2 young women being sold to settle a debt. He paused, his expression growing serious. It wasn't right what was happening to them. It wasn't legal, strictly speaking, either. But in a territory still finding its way toward law and order, such things happened. A murmur went through the crowd. Many of the newer neighbors had never heard this part of the Ryder's history. I'd like to say I acted purely from a sense of justice or moral outrage, Henry continued. But the truth is, I took one look at Amelia Shaw and lost my heart completely. He smiled at the memory. The fact that she came with an equally wonderful sister was, as I said at the time, twice the blessing. Laughter rippled through the gathering. Amelia felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the mild evening and everything to do with the love shining in her husband's eyes. So tonight, we celebrate not just 10 years of marriage, but 10 years of family, of building something lasting together. To Amelia and Abigail, who turned a simple cattle ranch into a true home, to Thomas, who proved himself worthy of one of those precious sisters. Henry raised his glass higher. And to all of you who have been part of our journey, may the next 10 years bring as much joy as the first. As glasses were raised and congratulations called out, Amelia felt a sense of completion, of rightness, that she had never expected to find in this wild, beautiful land. From the most unpromising beginning, 2 frightened young women on an auction block had grown this rich tapestry of love and life. Later, as music played and children darted between the dancers like fireflies, Henry pulled Amelia away from the celebration, leading her to their special spot on the rise overlooking the ranch. Happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they gazed at the lights below, at the home and life they had built together. Beyond words, she replied, leaning back against his solid strength. When I think of where Abby and I might have ended up. Don't, Henry said, pressing a kiss to her temple. That's not the story that was written for you. Amelia turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to trace the beloved features that showed the passing of time in the faint lines around his eyes, the touch of silver at his temples. No, our story was much better. The auctioneer said nobody wanted 2 mouths to feed, and you said, then I get twice the blessing, Henry finished with a smile. And I did, my love, I most certainly did. As they stood together under the vast canopy of stars, the sounds of music and laughter drifting up from the celebration below, Amelia Ryder thought about the long, strange journey that had brought her to this moment. From the refined drawing rooms of Virginia to the auction block in Silver Creek, from frightened orphan to beloved wife and mother, from unwanted burden to the heart of a thriving family, life was unpredictable, often difficult, sometimes cruel. But it was also capable of breathtaking beauty and unexpected joy. And sometimes, as she and Abigail had discovered on that fateful day when it seemed their world had ended, what appeared to be the worst moment of your life could actually be the beginning of something wonderful. I love you, Henry Ryder, she whispered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him under the endless western sky. Thank you for our blessing. Which one? He asked with a smile against her lips. All of them, she replied. Every single one.